Actor James Woods is in Twitter jail for posting a satirical meme. He tweeted this image, a trio of beta men wearing soy grins, telling Democrat men not to vote so that a woman's vote will count for more. A message that only a complete idiot would take seriously. The tweet was 2 months old, almost certainly meaning that a brigade of leftists engaged in targeted harassment by digging up the old tweet and mass reporting it. Woods' girlfriend Sarah Miller then posted a screenshot showing Twitter had locked Woods out of his account for tweeting something, quote, misleading in a way that could impact an election. I'll tell you what's going to impact an election. You suspending someone with 1.7 million followers over a meme weeks before an election. That's election meddling. I'll tell you what's going to impact an election. Google executives literally scheming in secret how they can manipulate the AI of their search results so Donald Trump can't win again.
What can we do to lead to maybe a better quality of governance?
That's election meddling. Facebook suspending the organizer of a march for black people and LGBT people who've become disenfranchised with the left. That's election meddling. And how many more times do I have to read this kind of crap from the legacy media? There's no evidence that either Google or Facebook systematically discriminate against conservatives. Bullshit! Anyone who uses social media with any regularity knows that conservatives are discriminated against on a daily frigging basis. Peter Fonda can call for putting Barron Trump in a cage with pedos and absolutely nothing happens to his account. Yet Alex Jones is rude to a CNN reporter, boo-hoo, and he's banned forever. Sarah Jeong can literally tweet race hate and then she gets verified by Twitter, while James Woods is placed on lockdown for posting a satirical meme. Oh, but there's no discrimination against conservatives. Give me a break. So now anything deemed misleading by the Twitter gods that could impact an election is a bannable offence? Oh, you mean like when David Hogg told an audience of Canadians to vote in the US midterm elections?
Turn that shame into your vote. I think Canadians can donate to political campaigns in the United States.
Is that misleading? Yes. It's illegal. Could it impact an election? Yes. Was David Hogg suspended for it? Of course not. No one should be suspended because this is a stupid precedent. Anyone who's political is trying to impact an election either way, and any information can arbitrarily be deemed misleading depending on your political bias. But since every social media platform is owned and run by far-left monoculture hysterics in Silicon Valley, you can guess who's gonna get punished and who's going to get away with it. James Woods was obviously targeted because he's a conservative with a huge following. So yes, big tech giants are discriminating against conservatives. And Trump's newly announced executive order investigating big tech's bias needs to be acted upon quickly. Otherwise, before long, like James Woods, we're all going to be silenced. Apple, Facebook, Spotify and YouTube all completely banned InfoWars within 12 hours of each other, clearly suggesting big tech collusion and proving their terms of service are all bullshit. This is political censorship. This is the Purge. Facebook cited language used to describe Muslims, transgenders and immigrants. They provided 0 specific examples as to what we said that was verboten. And neither did Apple, Spotify or YouTube.
But they're private companies, they can ban who they like.
No, Facebook, Twitter and Google have monopolized free speech online. They're a monopoly. They're also working directly with institutions of media. CNN whines all day about Trump threatening press freedoms, while simultaneously lobbying to have its competitors shut down by big tech. America's free press supports censorship. Big tech is colluding with leftist lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Democratic Congressman Ted Deutsch pressured YouTube and Facebook to ban InfoWars just a few weeks ago.
Alex Jones obviously is a well-known conspiracy theorist whose brand is bullying.
Typically, a channel gets 3 strikes, and then we terminate the channel.
Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley pressured Twitter to remove my tweets from trending hashtags, and they did.
On Twitter, if you clicked on the hashtag NYC terrorist attack, which is, quote, trending, marked with a red button saying, quote, live, the top tweet links to an InfoWars story with the headline, Imam, I warned de Blasio about New York City terror. He was too busy bashing Trump. But you
USA
saw this.
USA Today. At lunch, I did, yeah, and I also saw the system correct it.
As WikiLeaks tweeted, this is a global antitrust problem. This is cultural imperialism. So no, it's not just a private company. This is a handful of far-left hysterics in San Francisco framing legitimate criticism of mass immigration and Islam as hate speech. This is language policing. This is political censorship. They know InfoWars played a key role in electing Trump. This is punishment for that. And this all happened 3 months before the midterms. This is election meddling. This is election rigging. This was all coordinated. They all banned InfoWars within the same 12-hour period. That's big tech collusion. That's a total abuse of power. Now look at Apple's excuse for banning InfoWars. According to Apple, if you don't respect people with different opinions, you will be banned. Does this mean it's necessary to respect people who advocate child marriage and honor killings just to have a platform? Because I don't respect those people. I don't respect people like Louis Farrakhan, who praised Adolf Hitler as, quote, a very great man. Presumably, Apple does, because his app and his broadcasts are still available on their platform. I don't respect Antifa, a group that violently attacks innocent people. But Antifa's pages, podcasts, and videos are rarely, if ever, banned on any platform. Now look at Wikipedia. Activist editors removing Sarah Jeong's racist tweet controversy from her Wikipedia page, literally throwing the most important event in her career down an Orwellian memory hole, literally attempting to change reality and hide history. That's what this is all about. And all you liberals orgasmically celebrating big business censoring independent media, you're not liberals, you're authoritarians. Whether you hate Alex Jones is beside the point. Do you love the fact that a handful of tech monopolists have the power to simultaneously purge him from the internet? Forget the Supreme Court. Susan Wojcicki and Mark Zuckerberg are now de facto defining the parameters of the First Amendment. Big business monopolies as the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner on free speech rights. And so-called liberals are jubilant. Conservatives who don't speak out against this, who hide and cower in the vain hope that they'll be spared. Well, guess what? You're next. While you desperately clamour for respect from leftists who hate you, while you vigorously defend the free speech rights of James Gunn and Sarah Jeong, an electronic wall is being built. We need congressional action now. We need a digital Bill of Rights. We need new laws that block big tech monopolies from discriminating against people based on their political opinions. But listen, you can smear us, defame us, ban us, sue us, imprison us. It doesn't matter, because the horse has already bolted. The worldwide populist surge cannot be muted. It cannot be unpublished. It cannot be unlisted. It cannot be deleted. Whatever you do, it cannot and will not be silenced. Why do tech elites heavily restrict or outright ban their own children's use of technology? Bill Gates' kids aren't allowed to use smartphones after a certain time. We often set a time after which there is no screen time, and in their case that helps them get to sleep at a reasonable hour. Despite being an actual cyborg himself.
And I was human. I am human, still.
Mark Zuckerberg strictly limits his kids' use of smartphones and television. Asked if his kids loved the iPad, Steve Jobs responded, "They haven't used it. We limit how much technology our kids can use at home." Chris Anderson, CEO of 3D Robotics and a father of 5, said, "We have seen the dangers of technology firsthand. I've seen it in myself. I don't want to see that happen to my kids." Alex Constantinople, the chief executive of the Outcast agency, restricts her kids' use of gadgets to just 30 minutes a day and bans them, period, for her 5-year-old. As Alice Thompson wrote, it's astonishing if you think about it. The more money you make out of the tech industry, the more you appear to shield your family from its effects. Authors Joe Clement and Matt Miles ask, what is it these wealthy tech executives know about their own products that their consumers don't? The most sought-after private school in Silicon Valley bans electronic devices for the under 11s. Why do these people endlessly promote the wonders of technology out of one side of their mouths while privately keeping their own kids away from technology? I'll tell you why. Because they know what they unleashed was designed to be addictive. Addictive behavior leads to depression. We have an epidemic of childhood depression. Hospital admissions for suicidal teenagers have doubled in the last 10 years. 62% of undergraduate students describe feeling overwhelming anxiety. Depression rates have leapt by 63% for teens and 47% for millennials since 2013. The ubiquitousness and overuse of social media and smartphones has correlated with a surge in youth depression. 8th graders' risk for depression jumps 27% when he or she frequently uses social media. Kids who use their phones for at least 3 hours a day are much more likely to be suicidal. And it all comes back to addiction.
I feel tremendous guilt. It literally is a point now where I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are. Your behaviors, you don't realize it, but you are being programmed. It was unintentional. But now you got to decide how much you're willing to give up.
And I'm not just talking about the dopamine hits you get from reading messages and notifications. Did you know that when you pull down on the screen to refresh your social media feed, it was designed to mimic pulling down on the handle of a slot machine? It was designed to exploit the same psychological susceptibility that makes gambling so compulsive. Variable rewards. Each time you're swiping down, it's like a slot machine, said former Google employee Tristan Harris. You don't know what's coming next. Sometimes it's a beautiful photo, sometimes it's just an ad. According to Lauren Brichter, the guy who designed the pull to refresh option, even though it could be made redundant, the feature is there to serve a psychological function, to keep people addicted. Harris also blew the whistle on another feature that was designed to encourage addiction. Those Facebook notification alerts were originally blue to fit in with Facebook's color scheme, but designers discovered that when they were blue, barely anyone checked them. So they changed the color to red, and everyone started checking them compulsively. Red is a trigger color, Harris says. That's why it's used as an alarm signal. So they're literally causing little anxiety alarms to go off in your brain when you see these red icons, an anxiety that can only be assuaged when you click or touch on them. A leaked internal Facebook report revealed that big tech knows when teens are feeling at their most insecure or vulnerable. They can manipulate when users receive likes or other notifications, ensuring they arrive at a time when the user is in most need of attention or approval. All of us are jacked into this system, says Harris. All of our minds can be hijacked. Our choices are not as free as we think they are. A handful of people working at a handful of technology companies, through their choices, will steer what 1 billion people are thinking today. We've also been turned into outrage addicts. Half of the news media cycle is now just stirring up or reacting to contrived Twitter outrage. According to former Google strategist James Williams, we've habituated ourselves into a perpetual cognitive style of outrage by internalizing the dynamics of the medium. We're also addicted to distraction. Did you know that even the mere presence of a cell phone in your line of sight, even when it's turned off, damages cognitive capacity? It's called continuous partial attention. Just by having it sit there on the desk, you're damaging your concentration. And have you noticed this? Even when they're not looking at it, people have to constantly touch their phone like a junkie with an involuntary body spasm. What's fascinating is that a lot of these techies are fully aware of the monster that they unleashed and are now full of remorse. Justine Rosenstein, the Facebook-like co-creator, says the social media giant has created a psychologically manipulative dystopia which only cares about profit maximization, and that it needs to be regulated like tobacco companies. Another one of the women who helped develop the Facebook like button installed a plugin on her own phone, so she doesn't even have to look at her own Facebook feed. Lauren Brichter turns off his own phone at 7 p.m. and regrets creating social media addicts. I've spent many hours and weeks and months and years thinking about whether anything I've done has made a net positive impact on society or humanity at all. Google and Facebook venture capitalist Robert McNamee says that the smartphone and social media have had horrific, unintended consequences on society. He compares social media giants to drug dealers. The average cell phone user taps, swipes, and clicks a whopping 2,617 times a day. For heavy users, it's more than double that, adding up to nearly 4 hours a day devoted to cell phone use. And those numbers are over 2 years old, so it's probably even worse now. Go take a walk in the park. Despite the very point of taking a walk in the park being to get away from technology, how many people do you see buried in their cell phones? At this point, I'm seeing at least 50% of the people trapped in cyberspace, even when they're outside. People are so glued to their cell phones, they're now having to install ground-level traffic lights in some major cities. Forget virtual reality, how about we return to actual reality? Remember that? People at dinner on their cell phones, people in movie theatres on their cell phones. The CEO of AMC Theatres said, "You can't tell a 22-year-old to turn off their cell phone. It's like asking them to cut off a limb." There's a reason depression is exploding. And there's a reason why tech elites keep their own kids away from smartphones. They don't want their children to be sucked into this generational cycle of addiction, dependency, and unhappiness. That privilege is reserved for you. Well, it finally happened. I was suspended by Twitter for posting a video in which confronted CNN reporter, which resulted in being banned altogether. Wait, who is and who is? I can't tell you, otherwise I'll be. But there's no social media bias against conservatives. Honest. I mean, if you literally tweet about how you want to murder the president, you'll not only retain your account, you'll get verified. If you tweet racist bile about how you want white people to die, you'll not only retain your account, you'll get verified. But there's no social media bias against conservatives. Terror group Hamas still has an account. Jew-hating gay basher Louis Farrakhan still has an account. The people who threatened to kill Mike Cernovich's baby still have accounts. This verified Media Matters reporter who threatened violence still has an account. The actor who called for putting Barron Trump in a cage with paedophiles still has an account. But there's no social media bias against conservatives, so was banned for targeted harassment against. But CNN reporters can literally show up at an old lady's house, harass and dox her, but that's not targeted harassment.
Supporter of President Trump's received a slew of online abuse after American news network CNN publicly shamed her.
Goldfarb was viciously attacked online after the short interview spread like wildfire.
CNN reporters can intimidate and threaten to dox a private citizen over a meme, but that's not targeted harassment, because as we know, there's no social media bias against conservatives. CNN, Trump is trying to shut down the media. Also CNN, lobbies big tech to shut down the media. Now I'm sure the fact that Twitter and tweeted at the exact same time about ban is just a coincidence. And I'm sure that BuzzFeed tweeting about it at 4:45, AP at 4:46, then New York Times, followed by the Washington Post and Politico, almost like they were all tipped off by Twitter beforehand. After this, BuzzFeed writer lobbied to get banned, while Fox News didn't get the memo that was about to be banned, is all just one big coincidence. There's no collusion between big tech and corporate media outlets that want to shut down their competition, because as we all know, there's no social media bias against conservatives. And the fact that this all happened the day after big tech leaders testified in front of Congress, so Jack Dorsey wouldn't have to face questions about this, is also just a coincidence. Because as we know, there's no social media bias against conservatives. But Paul, my private company. Oh, shut the fuck up. Social media is the new public square. They're colluding with lawmakers, they're colluding with corporate media giants to silence dissidents. I'm done with your excuses and intellectual cowardice. I'm done with your glib myopia. This is a free speech crisis. If you don't think 20 SJWs working at Twitter or Facebook getting to decide who has free speech is a problem, then I'm done with you. Sign the petition in the description. I'm gonna ride it until the wheels fall off. You can ban us all, but at least what we did in the moment mattered. At least we were part of a movement that will reverberate throughout history, and you can't censor that. You can silence individuals, but you can never silence ideas.
Hey, y'all remember like 5 minutes ago when liberals were busy mocking Mike Pence as a prude for saying that he won't have dinner alone with women who aren't his wife? My, how that goalpost has moved. Hey guys, welcome back to Reality Check on MRCTV. I'm Brittany Hughes. Last year, Vice President Mike Pence publicly stated that he doesn't eat or take meetings alone with women who aren't his wife, or go to parties where there's alcohol if she's not there too. And liberals lost their minds. They called him a sexist prude. They mocked him for not being able to control himself around women. They laughed at him on Saturday Night Live and all of the late night shows. Here's a man who simply respects his wife so much that he wants to avoid the very appearance of impropriety, and they turned his integrity into the butt of their jokes. Now, this same group of left-wing hypocrites just spent the weekend tearing Brett Kavanaugh apart for drinking at high school parties 35 years ago. They've kind of temporarily set aside the whole sexual assault thing, considering they haven't been able to prove that, well, pretty much at all. So now they're on to dissecting his drinking habits from 1982 and analyzing his keg stand records and exactly when he lost his virginity. The side of the aisle that about 2 seconds ago was slamming Mike Pence for being a virtuous prude is now demanding that our SCOTUS nominees qualify for sainthood. At the same moment that Senate Democrats were busy grilling Kavanaugh over his drinking habits back in college, liberal Twitter was mocking Donald Trump for drinking Diet Coke instead of red wine during a UN meeting. Doesn't matter that the president has repeatedly said he hasn't had a drink since his brother died from alcoholism at 43. Hey, let's make fun of him for it instead. Funny how that works. See, if you don't drink, or if you say that sex should be saved for marriage, you're a religious nut job. Until you're a conservative who gets nominated for the Supreme Court. Then they'll comb through your old yearbooks looking for clues that you ever did one too many tequila shots and demanding to know every sordid detail about your bedroom life. And if they can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you ran a gang rape ring with a bunch of your 16-year-old buddies and not a single adult ever found out, they'll just set that aside and get you for the crime of playing beer pong while being a wealthy white male. Now, these are the same people who show up to protests dressed like condoms and vaginas and think that 14-year-old girls should be allowed to get publicly funded abortions without parental consent. And they're suddenly clutching their pearls over the notion that a 17-year-old boy drank beer in high school. They take every opportunity to slam Judeo-Christian values, and they demand we stop judging everybody, but now they seem to be suggesting that if you've ever been drunk, it's fair to assume that you're also a rapist. Funny when values matter and when they don't. Because for the left, it seems to be whenever they're politically expedient. So on that note, let he among you who's never chugged a natty light cast the first stone, and until then, maybe go crack the Bible you've all suddenly become so fond of. And that's your Reality Check, America. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and stay sane out there. From gay puppets to handmaids tromping around Senate office buildings, this week's news cycle has been so stupid and so toxic. We're breaking with tradition today and bringing you some of the best stories from this week that the nightly news didn't bother telling you. Hey guys, I'm Brittany Hughes and welcome back to Reality Check on MRCTV. This week we debated whether two male puppets on Sesame Street are in a secret sexual relationship. NBC spent 10 minutes on a porn star comparing the president's genitalia to a video game character. Joe Biden called Trump supporters the dregs of society, and the entire left-wing media repeatedly accused a man of an attempted rape from 35 years ago based on one woman's allegation and exactly zero proof. And you're a sexist who hates women if you don't believe her. That was this week's news cycle. Honestly, it's weeks like this one that kind of just make you want to throw in the towel and hole up in a bunker somewhere in the woods and hope that all of this insanity eventually burns itself to the ground. So if you too are thinking about heading down to your local Cabela's and becoming a doomsday prepper, here are 5 awesomely positive stories that the media totally ignored this week to help break up your toxic newsfeed. Being the irredeemable jerk that he is, Donald Trump had the audacity to embrace a little boy while handing out meals to Hurricane Florence victims in North Carolina. The president was encouraging some families who had been hit hardest by the storm when a little boy came up to him and asked for a hug. Here's the clip.
Can I have a
Speaking of Hurricane Florence, a van with more than 50 dogs and cats from a North Carolina animal shelter broke down at a gas station while trying to flee the storm. They couldn't turn around and go back home, which meant that all of these animals were stuck in a crowded vehicle without food, water, or air conditioning. The shelter didn't know what to do, so they put out a call on social media asking for help, and 55 strangers showed up with pet supplies and air-conditioned cars for the animals to cool off in. Another animal shelter showed up with a van for them to borrow. One of the Good Samaritans even paid to have the van repaired so the shelter could save money and help even more animals. All the pets were taken to safety and released to foster homes. Jeff and Rachel Finn were expecting their second child when doctors told them that their daughter would be born with a rare heart defect and probably wouldn't survive. Baby Ivy was diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, a condition that meant that her heart couldn't pump oxygen into her bloodstream. But after performing a rare and complicated surgery that had never before been done in a baby in utero, doctors were able to start repairing Ivy's heart while she was still in the womb. She was born last Friday. Since then, she's already had 1 open heart surgery and has 2 more operations scheduled, but she's already proven that she's a warrior. And she also proves that every single life, both born and unborn, is worth fighting for. 2 of the 55 sets of Korean War remains returned by North Korea have been identified. Those remains were those of Army Master Sergeant Charles McDaniel and Army Private First Class William Jones. McDaniel was only 32. Jones was only 19 when they died defending freedom overseas nearly 70 years ago. Of course, NBC Nightly News didn't think this story was worth mentioning, but we're sure it brings some comfort and closure to these heroes' families, and we thank them for their service. And some may not think this is positive, but me, I think it's awesome. Parkland shooting survivor and March for Our Lives co-founder Cameron Kasky says that he's stepped away from the left's signature anti-gun movement after realizing that, well, he's 17 and not exactly an expert on the whole gun issue. Kasky told Fox News Radio this week he now regrets calling Marco Rubio a murderer during a CNN town hall back in February and has come to a greater understanding of gun owners who use their Second Amendment right to protect their families, as well as women who identify as pro-life. Good for him. And that is your happy Reality Check America, and we hope it reminds you that not everything is as terrible as the media wants you to believe. Got a positive story of your own? Leave it in the comments and help save all of our sanity. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and stay sane out there.
Bananas, ooh na na. Let's put some tariffs on bananas, ooh na na. They should be grown in East Atlanta, na na na. Or maybe even Alabama. Take jobs back from Havana. Bananas, ooh na na. Havana is killing us on trade, I fear. Now that seems over. Look, they have jobs we no longer have here. And now we sell iPhones. Why can't we grow bananas ourselves? They taste worse than Costco. Don't be so stubborn, try one yourself. They need more water. Just grab and peel it like ooh. The texture is intriguing. Internally I'm bleeding. Got me feeling like ooh. We're gonna make a killing. I have to go. Oh na 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 na. Bananas, ooh na na. We'll put some tariffs on bananas, ooh na na. They'll soon be grown in East Atlanta, na na na.
Does he ever talk?
Or maybe even in Savannah, where brilliant central planners bananas, ooh na na.
Jeffrey just graduated fresh on campus, man. Fresh out East Atlanta with no manners, man. Pump, 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 pump. You'd have to pump in heat and water, dude. You need it hot, hot, hotter than Demi Lovato spoon.
Too soon.
Trading on me, shorty trading on me. Get you trading on me. Put that bacon on me. Put that maple on me. It's a corn on me.
But that trade deficit,
I can't apply. We got a trade deficit with Santa Claus. Free trades like a magic wand. Turns what you make best into what you want.
bananas, ooh na na. We've gone absolutely bananas, ooh na na. So listen to these central planners, na na na. Tell us how we should grow bananas, how we should trade bananas.
Horns, woo!